Today, I've brought together a panel of experts to help work us through the process of writing an effective personal essay. This could be for graduate school. It could be for a scholarship, a fellowship that you might be thinking about pursuing. The strategies are going to be very similar. So, Kim, do you want to pop up the first slide? Or is that me?
I got it.
I forgot already.
It's okay. I can bring it
Oh,
on
wait,
up.
I'm doing it. That's right.
You
No,
sure?
yes, yes, yes. Sorry, Kim. That
No worries.
just came back to me. All right, Zoom screen. I'm looking at this saying, why am I not seeing? All right, screen. There it is. Here we go. So
Yep, you got it.
our panel of experts, I'll let them introduce themselves as we see them listed here on the slide deck.
Great. So then that leads to me. Hi, everybody. My name is Kimberly Bucksbeck. I am the Director of Pre-Professional Health Advising. And if you are in the audience interested in going to med school, dental school, or most things in the health professions, we are definitely your spot of support. But thank you all for joining us this afternoon.
And hello, I'm Barbara Gorka. I'm the Director of Fellowships Advising. I mainly work with students who are applying to national fellowships. You might have heard of opportunities like the Fulbright, Rhodes, Marshall, Critical Language Scholarship, things like that. But we also support students who are applying to graduate school, not necessarily the entire process of the application, but if you are preparing a personal statement for graduate school, we are one of the multiple offices that you can seek support from. Also, just wanted to say, if you have a question during the session, feel free to put it in chat, and I'll make sure I'm checking every time we change a slide, or raise your Zoom hand and you can ask your question live.
Great. And I'm Bob McMahon. I'm the Associate Director of Career Development at the University Career Center. And here too is a place that you can get some support with your graduate school applications, the essays, even just thinking through, should I do it or should I not do it? There's a team of coaches here that are available for one-on-one appointments. If you decide after today, hey, I need some more specific tailored information just to me and my situation, that is definitely available. While we're getting started here, if you're willing and interested, drop in the chat. We're always curious to see what grad programs you're considering. We'd love to just be able to read about that. Today, we're going to provide you information, tools for success, advice on writing, and resources that you can access while you're here at Temple. Some of these resources are also available to you post-graduation. So for some folks, they graduate and it might take a year or two, and then they get the bug to go to graduate school. So understand that you can come back to at least to the University Career Center for support again, up to 5 years post-graduation. So here's a quick outline of today's session. We did our introductions. We're going to overview the elements of a personal statement. Now understand, we can't think of every single personal statement and all the multitude of questions you might encounter, but we're going to give you some solid foundations to start from and build from. We're going to review common pitfalls. So between the three of us here on this panel, we have seen thousands of these documents. We've reviewed thousands of these documents, and we have uncovered and discovered some common pitfalls that folks fall into. So we want to prevent you from doing that. We're going to do some analysis and discussion of some sample introductory paragraphs from actual personal essays that have been written. And then we'll pivot to some additional tips and resources. So to get started, when we think about a personal statement, it's a few different things all in one document. It's an indication of your priorities, your interests. It is a story, but specifically it's your story. It's not mine or what I think your story should be, or what Dr. Gorka thinks your story should be, or what Kim thinks your story. It's your story. I know I hear this often from students. They want to have something unique. They want it to stand out. Well, it will, because it's all about you. Your experiences are different than everyone else's. It's a narrative, it's an argument, and it's a reflective resume all in one document. And you'll say, well, how is that possible? Well, we'll walk through that. So as a narrative, this is all about your academic and career trajectory. Most commonly, these are themes that you will see in prompts for personal statements in grad programs. It's an opportunity to connect dots between the past, the present, the future. It's another opportunity to sort of fill in the gaps and tell a story about all the other things that are going in with your application. Mind you, the personal statement is but one component of a whole bunch of documents like a resume, maybe a cover letter, maybe test scores, letters of recommendation, transcripts. And here is a time and a place where you can sort of connect all those cold hard facts together. You might answer a variety of questions, like what led to your interest in this profession or this field of study? What are you doing now to prepare you for graduate schools? And what's your future goal? If it's applicable, do you know what you want to study or research or specialize in? So that forward-looking component. What type of work or research do you see yourself doing after you complete your degree? What are your career goals? I find often that this is a struggle for many folks to write about because they haven't put a lot of thought into that. You're very busy applying for the thing, and that's the goal, like we're looking just that far ahead. But here you have to push further. And that's what folks like us can do, is help get you to unlock some of those answers. As a narrative, your tone in the writing should be engaging, interesting, and it's uniquely you. Now, as an argument, you have to make a persuasive case. So you have to ask yourself a few things. Again, do a mental inventory almost. What experiences? So think about research, coursework, internships, volunteering, student organizations, anything have helped you prepare to excel in the program, in that discipline or field or career you're going after. Why do you belong in that specific program? Except in the case where you have a common application, meaning if you're applying to medical school where it's a common application, everyone answers the same essay question. Outside of that, you're going to have very specific targeted essays for each program you're applying to. Here, you want to make sure you're professional. So be yourself, but be your professional self. Now, lastly, that third piece, personal statement as a reflective resume. This is a chance where you're going to highlight, but you're not going to list. This isn't like a narrative list of your academic, volunteer work, internships. It's a point to. It might be a reflection of pulling out one or two key things that illustrate your readiness for the rigors of graduate or professional school. It's a reflection on your experiences. That's the key that sets yourself apart from other applicants. Again, I mentioned before, it's very common for everyone to want to feel, what do I, or say, like, I want to write a personal statement that stands out, that's different. And this is how it's going to be different, because you're going to reflect on those experiences. So thinking about what's special, unique, distinctive, impressive about you or your life story. Now, I'll pause for a second and say, I have a feeling that for a lot of you, you're going to say mentally, you may have just said it, there's really nothing that unique or special about me. We're kind of, as humans, do we just tend to do that? We devalue our experiences. But I'm here to tell you, I'm certain there's something great in your background that's going to fit. So it's just teasing that out. Think about what details of your life, your personal or family, your history, people, events that have shaped or influenced you. That might help a committee reading your essay for the first time better understand you or help set you apart from the other applicants. Next, I'm going to toss it over to Kim, who's going to talk to you about some common pitfalls.
Great, thank you, Bob. And so far, Bob had mentioned about how your personal statement is truly your narrative, your argument, and a reflective resume all in one. And we really want to emphasize that taking a personal statement really is something that does take a lot of time to think about, to create, And it's also something that is evolving because you are continuing to build towards becoming a stronger applicant for whatever this next step may be. So with that said, we want you to spend the time creating your personal statement wisely and think in a very reflective way of everything that you've done. We really don't want for you to spend the time committed to some of the common pitfalls that unfortunately, as we review personal statements, we see. So I want to walk you through some of the common pitfalls that as you are thinking and creating your personal statement, you want to think of these things as things to avoid in your personal statement. So we'll start with the first one. And that is you want to avoid statements like, I'm passionate for something. So for example, avoid statements like I'm passionate for German. Instead of saying this, you can try showing your passion through specific actions or habits. You might say something instead of I'm passionate for German, you might say something like, after I returned from studying in Germany, my roommates were ready to kick me out. I listened to German rock at all hours, spoke in German, and when they addressed me in English, and constantly prepared German dishes for our shared dinners. This way, you're providing a little bit more detail. You're not just stating that you're passionate about something, but you're also illustrating it in your writing, letting the reader know and also see your enthusiasm. Another statement to avoid, cliche statements like, I like to help people. So in your personal statement, you really want to try to avoid cliches, especially ones about helping others. Many people write that they like to help people. It's vague. It's also an overused statement. And what we really recommend is that you want to try to explain what helping means to you in a more concrete way. So basically using the experiences that you are bringing along with you to really talk and narrate about what you've done through your experiences that show that you like to help people. So for instance, instead of saying the statement, I like to help people, you could say volunteering, being very specific, volunteering at the free clinic allowed for me to contribute to my community and learn about the importance of health education and services in economically struggling neighborhoods. This is something, writing something more like this is showing how your actions actually align with your values and give the committee who is reading your personal statement insight about how the experience, what impact that had on you. All right, third tip, in your personal statement, you really want to try to avoid getting too personal. It's important that you realize that there are perhaps certain like personal challenges or difficult experiences. You want to try to be selective about incorporating those into your statement and avoid being too personal. If there's a particularly difficult experience that you want to mention, you can, but if you're deciding to keep that into your personal statement, you want to try and keep it brief and really focus on the positive from the experience and how it's influenced your journey along the way. So for example, rather than discussing the specifics about a traumatic event, you might highlight how it motivated you towards fulfilling your goal. Okay, and then the final pitfall, at least on this screen, is you want to try to avoid starting your statement with something catchy just because, or for the sake of attention, if you will. So a catchy opening is only effective if it's authentic and it truly adds to your story and connects to what your personal statement is going to be about. You want to avoid dramatizing your essay just to hook people into reading your statement or interested in your statement. It should all lead to what the core of your statement is going to be about. So you don't necessarily need to begin your statement with something catchy, or honestly, you don't need to necessarily have a creative writing piece to have an impact in a personal statement. Next slide, please. Thanks, Bob. All right, and so as we continue discussing ways to strengthen your personal statement, just want to emphasize a few more tips to keep in mind. The first thing being you want to avoid sharing your whole life story. So a lot of students, as they're building their personal statement, feel pressured to cover everything. And most personal statements are held to character limits. So you want to be mindful of character limits. And you also want to be mindful to if you are given a very specific prompt And you want to make sure with those things in mind that you're answering to the prompt, but also keeping your statement within the character limits. So you want to stay true to your story. Remember that you don't need to give your entire story, but just focusing on a few key experiences that best explain your motivations. You'll be able to then highlight on how these experiences led you up to your goal. A second thing to avoid is you want to avoid using big words that don't sound like you. Your personal statement is not necessarily conversational tone, but it should sound like how you speak. So you want to avoid sounding like how Joey did in this clip of Friends.
I don't understand.
Some of the words a little too sophisticated for you.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, of course it does. It's smart. I used a thesaurus.
On every word?
Yep.
All right, what was this sentence originally?
Oh, they are warm, nice people with big hearts.
And that became, they're humid, prepossessing Homo sapiens with full-sized aortic pumps.
Yeah, and hey, I really mean it, dude.
Thanks for sharing that. So as you can see, sometimes we think that using sophisticated vocabulary helps us to stand out, but in reality, clarity and naturalness are more effective in standing out in your personal statements. So please strive to write clearly, concisely, and directly in your personal statement. It should sound like you. Okay, so to wrap us up with some pitfalls to avoid, you want to avoid focusing too much on others, keeping in mind that the personal statement is truly about you. We realize that it can be tempting to talk about maybe parents or a social matter that means a lot to you, but please remember that admissions committees are really trying to wrap their head around how you and your experiences have led you to this particular place and why they should accept you. So this statement is about you. Use the opportunity to write about you and the experiences that you bring. And finally, the personal statement is really not an opportunity to restate your resume. So really hone in on the specific experiences that you think really stand out most and that have brought you to this point that really represent how you are prepared for this next step. You do not need to feel pressured to be chronological in your statement as well. So by starting out with a outline of these experiences, just keep in mind that you don't need to be chronological, but that you might be able to sync your experiences together to create your statement. Next slide.
Okay, first let me just confirm, does anyone have any questions about the pitfalls or the personal statement, the material that we've presented so far? I haven't received any by chat. Okay. Well, I'm going to first talk a little bit about the prompts that you might see, and then we're going to see some samples. So on this slide, we have a variety of prompts. First thing to keep in mind is you need to pay attention to the specific prompts that you have been given. And they could vary, like we have here, to the relative specific, where they're giving you some guidance about what they want to see, to the vague. The first one offers a lot of guidance on what they want to see. They give you the word count, 500 words, sort of the purpose for undertaking this graduate study. And then they say what they want to hear, your academic and research interests, your career objectives, and how a degree from the school will enable you to achieve your goals. This is a pretty standard graduate school personal statement. And it encompasses many of the elements that we've already talked about. The second one is a little bit different. It says about 2 pages, doesn't actually tell you whether it should be single spaced or double spaced. In a case like that, I'd probably reach out to somebody in the department or the school where you're applying to get confirmation on that. But describe an important or unusual aspects of yourself, not otherwise apparent in your application. That leaves a lot of room for interpretation, and they probably want it that way. The third is anyone who's pre-med, if you're going to see this, tell us about why you want to be a physician. that is very open-ended. And, I'm sure Kimberly has seen many different ways that students have approached the prompt like this. And then finally, you have one that gives you ideas that are much broader, backgrounds and life experiences, and they could include cultural, geographical, financial, educational, citizenship status, or other opportunities that are motivating your decision to pursue this graduate degree. I will clarify that particularly for those who are going to pursue a PhD, where you might have a personal statement plus a research statement. And I also believe with many students applying for law school, where they might have an optional essay where you can talk about things like this. So there are times when you will have 2 essays. If that is the case, if you are seeking help from one of our offices, be sure that we know that even if you've submitted 1 essay, let us know that there is another, because that will inform the kind of content that you include. Okay, so for what we're going to see next, could you change the next slide, please? We're just looking at opening paragraphs. The reason for this is purely logistic. If we were to share, say, a 2-page personal statement, it's hard visually to show it on the screen, but also it would take a whole lot of time. So opening paragraphs are a good way to show you content, tone, and the elements of a personal statement in a short period. So we're going to look at those. These, in theory, are early drafts. I think there's one of them that's a later draft. So when you read it, think about not just what's horrible about this, but what would this person, are there any nuggets or phrases or sentences that you think the student should develop more in their next draft? And that's the kind of thing that you would do if you met with one of our offices. It's not just us correcting your grammar, but getting you to say like, oh, this person referenced studying abroad in Spain, but didn't say anything about it. And depending on that person's trajectory, we might say like, well, let's talk more about this to see if you need to write more about it. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is first sample. We'll take a minute or 2 to read it, and then we'll discuss it and have it also, whether it's chat or in person or live discussion, but take a minute. Okay, you probably all have thoughts, and maybe can I identify some of the pitfalls here, but I want to open up. If you were to identify one sentence where if you were the advisor, you would say like, oh, let's have you tell us more about this to see if you should be telling us more in detail. Is there a sentence, and you don't have to give the whole sentence, but if you want to put in chat or unmute yourself or raise your hand, give us an example where you'd like to know more information from the student. Don't be shy. Yeah, Amanda says the personal and professional background. They say my personal and professional background would add to the school's diversity, but we learn nothing about that student's personal and professional background. Again, opening paragraph, you're not going to get all the information, but hinting at some of it would at least allow us to start to get to know you better. Let's see what else we have. Jamira talks about several personal misfortunes. So that's absolutely something we talk about. Is it appropriate to go into that in the opening paragraph? Let's figure out if this is something that should go into your opening paragraph or somewhere else in your essay, or not at all, just depending on that. let's see, we have work experience, why they're interested in law school, graduate academic successes, expand on the first sentence. Great. So you can see how everybody will have things that they can build on. Let me ask now, do you see any other pitfalls that we want to advise a student to avoid in their next draft? Particularly thinking of the video clip that Kimberly showed from Friends. What is the opening sentence? Can anyone restate that in under 10 words? What is jurisprudential system? You could get that down to one word. Our jurisprudential system in one word is, yeah, using Abby, right? Use words you'd normally use in everyday vocab. So jurisprudential system could be simply law, right? Like they're trying to use bigger words. Yes, Adam, great. I'm interested. We don't want to say, now that takes us to a new issue though. If we're looking at this student and they're opening with, I'm interested about law school, or I'm interested in the law. The student is applying for law school. What is the issue with that sentence if that's how they open up? So we've gotten it down to, I'm interested in law. And again, if you want to unmute yourself and say, or just put it in chat, what is the challenge if you're applying to law school with opening with, I'm really interested in law? Exactly, Maddie, like everyone applying to law school is interested in it. So that's something that we've heard already from Bob and Kimberly. You want to make yourself stand out. So be mindful of who else is applying and what you're applying for. So opening with a statement that anyone could say, not that everyone's going to say it, but if they could say it, it's not specific enough to you. So be mindful of that. Yeah, and so a lot of this is we need more detail, and we need the student to use simpler, more concise language. The other thing is telling us things like my LSAT score and my grades are great. It's a waste of space. They're going to have your scores, and we don't need that in your opening paragraph. Great. Okay, let's move to another sample. The next sample, we'll see different kinds of things. Okay, take a minute and read this, and then we'll discuss. Okay, would you all want this person in your med school? That's an easy, probably a pretty easy one. Why not? What don't we see here? Adam, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and let us know what you think.
I was going to say there's a real lack of, I guess, actual action, and it just seems to be a lot of like this person going through like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and especially the last sentence is just filled with being egocentric.
Yeah, this is not a humble applicant. And humility is usually a good thing in fellowship or grad school applications. I know it's a balancing act. We tell you you have to highlight your experiences and your success while reflecting on them, but don't boast. This student is not being humble, definitely boasting, and yes, making it seem like I deserve this. Anything else? Do you feel like you know much about this student? Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, it just kind of seems like they aren't justifying at all why they have this greatness about them. They're just like, my parents told me I'm great, and my dad's a doctor, so I should be too. And there's no sustenance to back that up at all.
Right, and this student is it's we always use and one of the tips was to show, don't tell. This student is just telling us that they're great, and they're, because people have told him that they're great, and we as readers should just accept that, and and that readers will not just accept that, and that's where, again, showing rather than telling is what you want to strive for, and you show through action, through specific experiences, and things that you have done, not what others have told you about yourself. This might be an extreme example. For the sake of this workshop, it's easiest for us to use ones that are extreme examples. I think everyone struggles with that whole idea of having to highlight your success without sounding boastful. And there's lots of ways of doing it. That is not this. Great. Okay, next slide. Next sample. Take a minute to read it. Okay, well, this student is a good writer and pulls us in. Why do you think we're having you read it? What is this student? This is one of the pitfalls that Kimberly talked about. What is she doing that makes her opening paragraph less effective than it could be? Sarah, yes, says this story is about Grandma Betty, not about the applicant. And Madeline, go ahead. I don't know if you have anything to add. That's a pretty succinct description.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I think it's good that she's talking about her grandmother, but I would add more about herself as well.
Yeah, and maybe flipping this so that she's opening with her own interest or experience in public health. And then perhaps in the second paragraph or briefly in this opening, mentioning her grandmother's influence on her. But that opening paragraph, this is where we talked about, you shouldn't just talk about your parents or a relative or the issue that you care about. You need to be present as well. Again, you can do both of those things at the same time. You can tell us about people who have influenced you. You can tell us about an issue you care about. But again, it's through showing what you have done. And through that, we can then understand the influences better. Again, this is a straightforward, a pretty easy one to see. We don't get to know the applicant, and this is supposed to be a personal statement. Okay, let's see I think the final sample. I leave an open question here. What do you all think of this sample? What do they do well, or what do you think that they could still improve on, if either of those extremes? Yeah, so Madeline says she likes this one. It seems well thought out and about the students' experiences. How many of you have changed? You don't have to raise your hand, but I'm sure many of you in the audience changed your major at some point. And perhaps you're wondering, how do I pull that in? Sometimes there's no need to bring it in, but for this student, it made sense to do that because there was a specific event that changed his direction. We don't all have that specific event. So yeah, so for those who have had that sort of career or academic change, this is a good example for that. Anyone else notice anything specific about this opening paragraph? Anyone else? One thing I can say is I see this most commonly for law school personal statements is that many students at the second to last paragraph or the last paragraph will make it specific to the university that they're applying to. I always feel that that's really obvious, you know, that somebody's applying for many schools and I'm just going to change this one paragraph. This student is actually introducing the program, the specific university, and the degree at that university in their opening paragraph, and they actually wove it into their entire essay. So in another paragraph where he was making a case for this program, he mentioned 2 professors that he had met at the school's open house and how that conversation really confirmed his interest in the program because of their specialization in fill in the blank. I don't remember. So it wasn't just one paragraph at a time. And the end result was it felt like I really want to be at this program. So I know that's challenging when you're applying to a lot of schools, but I do believe it's more effective than just having one paragraph you swap out at the end of it. Yeah, also notice clean, clear, concise language. There's nothing in it. My guess is that everyone here understands everything in it. You don't have to flex your discipline specific jargon in your personal statement. If you are writing a research statement, which would be common for many PhD programs, that would be the place for it. And I did see when we were asking about who is applying to what programs, there are in our session today several students applying for a PhD. I will just add to all the things that we've said, your personal statements are more likely to look like or to focus on your evolution as a researcher or your evolution as an academic. There might be cases where you bring in other aspects, especially if you faced obstacles in pursuing that kind of career. But it might be more that the personal will come into your personal evolution as a researcher rather than some of these other things that we've talked about. I think we're ready for the next slide, Bob.
Yep,
Okay, and I think it's back to you.
sure is. Thanks for walking us through those samples. And I know you have another thing to get off to at some point, so I'll thank you right now for joining us again and providing your wisdom and expertise on this. We're in the home stretch of today's talk. For those of you that are out there, just to know a little bit left to go, and then we'll certainly take any questions that you might have. So some additional tips for success that we've thought about and sort of collated collectively. Where do I start? This is a big question that you will encounter. I think the best advice I could give you is first, identify the essay requirements. We saw earlier 4 different types of questions, and that's just 4. I mean, there are many others out there. So you must identify the essay requirements. I know it's easy to go search online, Google or whatever, best tips for writing a personal essay, and you'll get, broad advice, but it's really important that you zone in on each specific program that you're applying to, assuming you're applying to multiple, not a centralized environment. So what is it that they want? How many pages? How many characters? How many characters with spaces? That's my favorite one. The med school one is all about characters with spaces. Where others, it's 2 pages, double spaced. Some don't even address that. So understanding. And then what is it that they're asking you to respond to? What are the questions? Build an outline from those questions to get you started. That'll keep you on track and keep you from veering off of the path of responding to the questions. It's easy to sort of get lost in the story and forget to respond to the prompt that you're being asked. Consider, if it's appropriate, incorporating these core themes into your personal statement, your motivations, your interests, your experience, your skills, your goals in graduate school, your future career plans. All 4 of these fall back into that general bucket I think about of reflection, self-reflection. You have to really spend some time and think about and respond to these questions for yourself. I don't know your motivations or your skills, only you know that. And the people that will read these, they don't know that either. So you have to know what they are and be able to articulate them. Should I be chronological? I'd say maybe, but not necessarily. It's a reasonable way to approach it, especially if you follow the idea of using the questions, the prompts as an outline. But you could also then later decide, let me move some sections around because that flows better, differently, whatever. It's really a case-by-case basis, I think. Some additional tips. Here's some bad news. I hope I don't alarm anybody, but be prepared to write a few drafts. You will not do this in one draft. Haven't seen it yet. You may get really close, but just be prepared to write multiple drafts. Start as early as you can. So you have to understand, for the places that you're applying to, what are the deadlines, and then work yourself backwards from there. Remember to directly answer the questions in the prompt. That's the key thing. Know what the prompt is, and then make sure you are answering those questions. Seek feedback from others. Now, this can feel awkward. I understand that. Like, I'm sharing my deep personal thoughts in writing, and it's uncomfortable to do this. And now you're asking me to show it to somebody else. And yeah, you should do that. You need a second or third set of eyes, trained eyes, people that are skilled and experienced in doing these things, like folks at the Writing Center, maybe fellowships advising, maybe PPHA, maybe here at the Career Center, maybe an academic advisor or a professor that you have, established a relationship with that's willing and able to do that. But seek out those trained eyes, and then proofread, proofread, proofread again. There are links here to 4 places, which I'm going to put in the chat right now for you, where you can seek out that help. The Writing Center, Fellowships Advising here at the Career Center, and Pre-Professional Health Advising. These are on-campus resources that are available to you right now. Take advantage of them as you are embarking on this process, or if you're in it right now. And that leads us to any questions that you all might have.